What up, Wizards? It's Dev, Mtg. We like it a magic, especially on nights like this, because we got some big fat news for you, maybe. Perhaps, possibly. It caught me off guard, too. I was walking into my office to record a video about all the cards that get better when Fable of the Mirror Breaker gets banned. It's going to be a fun one. Don't worry, we're still going to do it. But right before I hit record on my camera, I look at my phone, and I immediately see that there are more pressing issues to attend to, because apparently we're not sure how reliable it is and all that. We'll talk about my thoughts after we read through it, but it turns out that there has been a leak of Monday's upcoming ban announcement. But is it real? We'll talk thoughts and opinions on all that kind of stuff in just a second, but what I do know for sure is that it's juicier than an overripe papaya, and it'll definitely get a conversation going about whether or not this is even like what we want, right? So without further ado, let's take a look. It was originally posted on Pastebin, which I have right here, which I do like. They have a default dark background, but also there's no way you can read this text. There's ads everywhere, and I hate that. So let's not look at that super squanched text. I'm not sure that's the correct word, but let's look at Reddit, which has a default white background, and that kind of sucks, but that just looks so much more legible, readable to me. So let's read through this. Let's see how it goes. Ban announcement got leaked is the name of the post by Unverified. It's actually posted by Selesnia, user cmushroom9180, in case you care. But they say the banned and restricted site always gets scraped for info 7 days early. It's happened like 5 times now. That is the only input that they actually have in this post. That's the last time you'll hear from the poster. Everything else is just copy pasta of the announcement. So the only things that are getting banned are in standard. This is a standard specific announcement. The cards getting banned, 8 of them apparently. Again, allegedly, I should add to all of this. Wedding announcement. The Wandering Emperor. Invoke Despair. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Rafine, Scheming Seer. Atraxa, Grand Unifier. Reckoner Bankbuster, and Plaza of Heroes, all banned. Now, I have a deep compulsion to stop here and just discuss all of these cards, but instead, we're going to be disciplined and we're going to finish reading through the announcement, timestamp of when we're done doing that right here on screen. But let's finish the, again, alleged announcement before we really get into the editorializing, right? The op-ed section. You may notice that the majority of the cards we are banning today are from sets that would have rotated this fall before our announced change to standard rotation. This is intentional because, beyond the individual reasons outlined below, many of these cards feel like they have overstayed their welcome and players are ready for a format without the constraints that these cards bring to deck building and gameplay. Taking action on these cards now will allow a large number of cards and strategies that were previously suppressed to have their time in the sun and give standard players a fresh, enjoyable format before the release of Wilds of Eldraine this fall. We'll be breaking the banned cards down by color below, starting with black. 1. Invoke Despair. Invoke Despair represented an experiment on our part to push Punisher-style cards into a more competitive space. It also represented our relatively recent move towards letting black have some way to deal with enchantments. In this case, the knobs on this card were tuned a bit too high, with it being burn, removal, and card advantage in one package. This has resulted in it being the default 5-mana play in all black decks, despite lots of other powerful options existing in the format. In order to allow for greater diversity of late-game plays in black decks, Invoke Despair is banned. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Fable was one of the most played cards in Standard at the recent Pro Tour March of the Machine, and has been highly played throughout its tenure in Standard and beyond. Fable is another card where the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and yet each part is also very strong. That's a good way of putting it. Fable is a card that generally requires more than one card to reasonably answer, and sometimes much more than even that. It is a card that can win the game by itself when you play multiple copies. You don't have to play multiple copies, it's still ridiculous card. It also creates very similar play patterns game after game, which contributes to player fatigue. That is true. Rafine, Scheming Seer. One of our goals with these changes is to ensure that while we ban cards from some of the top decks, we are conscious not to leave outliers that we are already confident will take their place. Rafine is a key part of the Esper Legends deck, which, although it has fallen out of favor recently, was previously very successful. Rafine has a similar effect to Fable in that she is difficult to remove cleanly and contributes to repetitive game states and snowball effects very early in the game. We are consciously choosing to depower these legendary-based decks so that they do not simply replace the black-red decks in the metagame. Atraxa Grand Unifier. Atraxa is a newer card than most of the ones we are banning today, although her effects on the metagame have already been felt across multiple formats. Atraxa was intended to be the payoff for playing a dedicated ramp and reanimator strategy. As the format has shaken out, it has become clear that the high risk or the risk involved in ramping into or reanimating Atraxa is a bit too low and the reward too great. As additional tools for these strategies enter standard in future sets, as well as improved mana bases to hardcast Atraxa more easily, we expect she will be the default top end for many decks, which will likely prove frustrating for players. For this reason, we are choosing to ban Atraxa now in order to allow for a more diverse range of ramp and reanimator payoffs. Reckoner Bankbuster. Bankbuster was one of the most played cards across all archetypes at Pro Tour March of the Machine. The requirements for adding Bankbuster to your deck, I don't know why that was so difficult, are very low, as it can even provide its own method of crewing. There are a number of other colorless cards which fit into a variety of decks that can provide card advantage at a slightly less efficient rate than Bankbuster and will provide a bit more diversity in terms of their rate of play. Plaza of Heroes. Legendary creatures are a very popular part of Magic, and we wanted to enable a Legendary Matters archetype in Standard, where such a thing is not usually viable. Unfortunately, in this case, we overshot on the mana base. Gotta admit when you're wrong sometimes. The additional abilities beyond mana fixing on Plaza contribute to frustrating play patterns that have little counterplay, that's true. Since legendary decks already get quite a lot of value out of the Kamigawa Channel lands, we are choosing to bring down the power level of the mana base a bit here to compensate. Wedding Announcement. Similarly to Fable, Wedding Announcement provides a large amount of material for a small mana investment and is difficult to interact with. We are concerned that after banning Fable, if we did not ban Wedding Announcement, it would effectively take Fable's place in the metagame. The Wandering Emperor. White's removal suite in Standard is very diverse at the moment, and the Wandering Emperor puts players in a squeeze between playing around her on one hand and playing around sweeper effects on the other. There are other cards in White and other colors that provide same squeeze, while also not winning the game in one efficient package. In addition, the 2 white cards we are banning today are in anticipation that decks featuring these cards would quickly rise in popularity in the context of the other changes to the format. A note on Sheoldred the Apocalypse and Bloodtithe Harvester. Nothing about Thalia, interestingly. Though Sheoldred is highly played in black decks at the moment, and she is a very efficient threat at her mana cost, we are choosing not to take action on her at this time. We believe the suite of changes we are making today, specifically those aimed at weakening the black-red base decks, will mean that Shelly is more easily answered in the absence of her supporting cast. Bloodtithe Harvester is a very efficient 2-drop, which is ubiquitous in black-base-red decks. Black-red base decks, sorry. Most black-red decks are in fact very based. Despite its high rate of play, we feel that the other changes we are making today will allow Harvester to continue to exist in the format and provide a quality 2-drop for other fringe decks like Vampire Tribal, which may not have had the chance to shine until now. Final thoughts. We hope that the changes we have announced today will allow cards and strategies that have previously remained underexplored to rise up and take a more prominent place in the metagame, while still allowing for some versions of the existing decks to continue, albeit at a lower power level. We hope that this will provide an exciting new environment in which players can innovate and compete. And then, again, the original poster. I guess they do say one more thing. Here's the link to the original leak. Now, I brought you back to the actual list of banned cards. You're welcome. I'm not going to talk about all my thoughts about the actual announcement and these cards and all that in this one video because, I'm probably going to have to make another video a little bit like this once the ban announcement is actually official, and I want to save the majority of my thoughts for that video. However, if you want the abridged version about how I would feel about such an announcement, Wedding Announcement ban, yay. Wandering Emperor ban, yay. Invoke Despair ban, yay. Fable ban, yay. Rafine ban, yay. Literally all of these cards I am totally fine with being banned. Not because I think these cards are, most of these cards at least, are completely unfair and should have never been printed. Nothing like that. Nothing at all. I just like the idea of shaking up the format. These are largely cards that I've either gotten sick of playing against, like Invoke and Fable and Wandering Emperor, or they're cards that definitely I could see them taking a hold of the format once, like Fable and Invoke Despair are banned, right? And we talked about this in a previous video. Just recently, the whole idea that if they do ban the Rakdos deck, it's effectively what they do if they ban Fable. and Invoke, people can still play Rakdos. It's just nowhere near as good of a deck. And if they do that, then you got to worry about things like Esper Legends. You have to worry about mono white mid-range or control or whatever you call it. Taking a foothold in Standard, like too much of a share of Standard. And they have addressed, or at least it appears as though they may address those problems. And I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think that if this is the announcement, it's a pretty good announcement. It seems weird to see 8 cards banned and still, in my mind, I know not everyone's going to feel this way, but in my mind, still be like, well, what about this card or what about that card? It feels weird to see 8 cards banned and want 10 banned. Honestly, though, I was of the impression that we would only see like 3 cards banned, 5 at the very most. But this is a lot more than I expected. I think a lot of people expected. And again, we don't know if this is 100% valid, but moving into the part of the video that I do want to talk the most about, whether or not this is a valid ban. For one, what the OP says here, the banned and restricted side always gets scraped for info 7 days early, happened like 5 times now. That is true. That is a true statement of life. That is a thing. That's a thing that has happened multiple times. It's not like this is the first leak for a ban announcement that we've seen. Now, I will also contrast this by saying that we have seen fake ban announcements before, but it is very, very few and far between that actually happens. For the most part, we get relatively reliable leaks when it comes to bans. I don't love leaks when it comes to new cards. I really don't. There's all kinds of stuff that messes up. But when it comes to these kind of leaks, leaks of the ban announcements, I'm like 100% in favor of them. Just for a little bit of nuance there. These are the kind of leaks that I'm kind of into. Allows people to prepare, right? And that I really, really like. So I have no issue if this is a real leak with the fact that it got leaked. I know I've kind of gone on record before saying I don't love leaks of new cards. So I just want to get that cleared up. These are the good leaks. But the other thing I want to point out, besides the fact that this first statement is correct, is that they have nailed like 100% the writing style of a Wizards ban announcement. Again, if it's not real. Now, I'm not saying that is the most difficult feat in the world, but it's funny how no matter who's writing the articles, right? Is it Blake Rasmussen? Is it Aaron Forsyth? Is it Adam Staborski? Is it any of the people who have ever written a ban announcement for Wizards of the Coast? It's kind of funny how they are all, you couldn't tell which of them wrote the piece because they're all written in a very similar kind of way. And I think that's the way Wizards wants these articles to be written. And if this is fake, then the author has emulated that style to the 9, like to the letter. I'm very impressed. I've already seen the joke that, they fed Wizards corporate speak into Chat GPT or whatever. And I'm not convinced that it could do this advanced of a job because this is a very good job of sounding like what Wizards sounds like when they, give us their reasoning for banning things. The initial reaction to this, what little I've been able to see, has been very, very largely positive, which I'm a little surprised by. When we were first talking about the ban announcement, I saw a lot of people online, mostly on Twitter, who did not like the idea of bans basically ever. I mean, you always see these people. So there should be no reason to ban anything ever under any circumstances. It's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous point of view to me. It's not a very good opinion. But I saw a good number of those people when they announced that there would be bans in the first place. That said, most of the reception of this so far has been like, this is going to be awesome, I will say that some of the people who said, again, if this is correct, some of the people who said that they may use these ban announcements, which they will do, once a year before the fall set comes out, that they will use these ban announcements as kind of mini rotations in a way. And this one, more than any other, they will use as a mini rotation. Because we're not going to get an actual rotation this time around. So it kind of feels like they moved rotation up to May the 29th, which I'm kind of okay with. One of my problems with Aftermath as a set was that I said I don't have a problem with a summer small set because it can break up the monotony of standard. Usually we don't get a new standard set from May to September, and that's a really long stretch to go through without a new standard set. And so you can use a small set to break that summer monotony a little bit. My problem with Aftermath was that it was underpowered, and it came out at the wrong time. It came out, May. Whereas I feel like that set should come out in like late July or something. This I like a little bit better. Now, obviously, this is still happening in late May, but this is going to shake up the format more than Aftermath could have ever hoped to, and I really like that. Now, I have a fear about it, and again, I won't go too deep into any of my fears, but my basic fear is that, again, Thalia wasn't banned. Nothing from Mono Red was banned either. Sheoldred wasn't banned, which I think will help stave off any impending Mono Red tide or aggro tide for that matter. But I think that if you ban all these cards and do not ban Thalia, Soldiers is the de facto best deck in the format. So we'll see about it. I'm not sure that's how it's going to go, but I'm really nervous about not banning Thalia here, especially considering she's been around for as long, or in a lot of cases longer than a lot of these other cards. She's had her time in standard. You could have banned her, it would have been fine. So I'm not too sure about that. But one thing I will say, back onto the point that I was on a minute ago, it's classic dev video stuff, is that if this is fake, they have painted wizards into a fun corner. That's where I was going. I was sorry. I was saying that the response to this has been overwhelmingly positive from what I can tell so far. People saying if this is real, then it's great and all that. Which means that if it is not real, then Wizards may be panicking at this point, because again, most of the vast majority of the response I've seen to this has been great. So now if they're planning on actually, for real, just banning like 2 or 3 cards, that's going to look pretty bad in comparison to this. I've also seen the tinfoil hat conspiracy that this is fake, but despite the fact that it's fake, it was still leaked by Wizards. That's kind of a litmus test, like, will they like this if we do it? They still haven't made the decision yet. They're just trying to figure out sort of what the response to this is in the community before they pull the trigger on anything that's drastic, And I do like that theory. I don't usually go in for theories, but this one seems relatively harmless and at least like somewhat feasible too. So it would be very cute if they did not originally intend to ban all this and were like, let's see what happens if we leak banning 8 cards. And then it turns out the community's really into it. And they're like, oh, well, okay, let's do that then. Just let me know how you feel about all this stuff. I am all ears, because there are a lot of interesting opinions to be had and heard about all this nonsense. So, but just again, bottom line, if this is the real announcement, then I am pretty happy about it. I have my apprehensions, right? But I'm fairly happy if this is for shiz the announcement, but let me know. I am just as interested in your opinion as I assume you are mine if you clicked on this video. So I love you guys. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten the couch card of the day. Let's see what it is real quick. We haven't done it. We got to do it. Hold on. I'm not looking at the cards that I'm picking out. We got a Riveteer's Outlook. That's, somewhat, it's flipped. I apologize for that. But I guess that's sort of relevant to today's content. Can you imagine if they did ban Triomes? We'd all be playing new Capenna lands. Well, I guess Triomes are new Capenna lands. Anyway, hit up the Patreon. I would really appreciate that if you want me to keep making content and, be paid enough to continue doing that. Link in the description for the Patreon. It's just $1 a month, and it really helps out. Aside from that, again, check me out on Twitch. Link in the description. And if you want to see that video about like the percentage chance all these cards might get banned, I'll leave that in the description for you too. But anyway, that's all I got for this one, so I'll catch you cats later. I'm Bev from the Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.